All right, it's that time again. Let's check out the Patchworks used and vintage section to see if there's anything that you must have there. There is an Eloquencer. I'm very, very curious about the Eloquencer. I'd like to try that thing out. The 4MS Quad Clock Distributor. Oh, Polyand Tracker. Oh, there's a used ES9 from Expert Sleepers. I just got one of these and it's very cool. Ooh, a Chaos Batumi. I've always wanted to try one of those. The Roland Octopad is still available for anyone who wants to buy that and send it to me. A bunch of new stuff since we've last checked in. So head over to patchworks.com, patchwerks.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Podular Modcast. This week we have Andrew from Qubit returning to the show to talk about Mojave, and we'll get into that in a moment. But first, I want to tell you about a show that I'm going to be playing here in a couple weeks in Tacoma, my hometown. I'll be playing at Real Art Tacoma with Runati, Pentacles, and my good buddy David Lutz, aka Lousy Falcon. Sunday, November 26th, 7 p.m. to 11:30. I believe, let's see, there's the information we need. It is an all ages show. Link to that in the show description. Andrew, it's nice to see you again. Nice to have you back. And I'm super excited to get into this and pick your brain because I was lucky enough to be asked by y'all to do some beta testing and trying out of Mojave before it was released. And that's been a lot of fun. So thank you for that. But I want to ask you just right off the bat, real quick, like, how do you feel so far? It's been what? It's been 2 weeks, maybe, at the time of recording that it's been out in the world, maybe 3?
Yep.
Yeah. And how do you feel about it? So, like, does it feel, I don't know. That's got to always be weird. The only thing I can kind of imagine, well, I guess I did release a module before, but it was kind of like a half joke thing. But like releasing an album or something, it's like, well, it's out in the world now, you know? So
yeah. It's always nerve wracking and you never know what's going to happen, you know? Mm-hmm. And, first of all, thanks for having me back. I didn't get a chance to say that, but it's great to be on here. I always love chatting with you, and especially since you got to be on the beta testing team, it's kind of a unique perspective to have this conversation with. So
Yeah, yeah.
super stoked to be here.
I feel really bad, you guys. I was like testing it out, writing notes, and every time I had like something that I was like, okay, I have enough to like send them some information, I'd get a new firmware. And then I was like, okay, well, a lot of this stuff is fine. And then I went on a vacation, and then I got back, and it was like, ah, shit. So I don't think I really helped you very much, but I plan on, I've been using it a lot, and I'll be, putting out patches and whatnot with it. So
No, and what we did get was super helpful from you, and a lot of people, especially some of the people listening to this, might not realize, but designing anything, especially a Eurorack synthesizer module, it's probably more hectic than you're imagining without having seen how the sausage is made, so to speak. So, we try to do frequent releases. That's kind of a big, just MO of ours: release early, release often. And some of our beta testers have a hard time keeping up, which is also why we try to keep the team really small with those external people, because they feel lost. Like, oh, there's too many releases. Why bother at this point?
Right.
So it happens. It happens. But yeah, to touch on your first point there, I mean, it's always nerve-wracking releasing a module, because you never know if you missed something, or if you really did a take that people aren't going to dig too much, because we try to put our mark on it, our stamp on the process. Sure. We want to make a module that exemplifies our design paradigms, our philosophies, etc. And so sometimes they land, sometimes they're cool, but they don't land as well. So you never know. But I mean, we're extremely excited with all the feedback we've gotten, all the videos and the content we've seen, the amazing patches and music we've heard so far. Just blows us away. So people took it, they liked it, and they ran with it, and they took it to places that we didn't even imagine was possible right off the bat. So
that's awesome.
Can't complain.
Yeah. My only experience with this was with like the Bleep Bloop module, and there's another one that's going to be coming out soon. That's not like a joke module, but these are analog things. So even within the analog world, you were just describing like how hectic and just, crazy the whole thing can be. But with what y'all are doing, you're adding like this super complex digital side to it. So not only do you have the hardware, the analog portions of the hardware that you're making sure all works right and stuff, but you've got the code side of it too. So I can't even imagine how much, like, that just seems like an exponential addition on top of it. So yeah,
it is. Yeah. Firmware is crazy. I mean, devices that run code, any type of code, just has its own set of problems. It always does. And they can always be crazy for so many different reasons. But, over the years, I'd like to think we've gotten a little better with that aspect of it. We don't do firmware updates on the day that we start shipping anymore. So that's great. That's a plus. But it's an interesting concept, because we live in this world of constant firmware updates. And with that, I think a lot of companies have adopted this mindset of a certain, large percentage of bugs are okay. Whereas before it was like, let's face it, there's going to be bugs, right? There's always bugs. If there's code, there's bugs. It's just a matter of what the bugs are.
Right.
But especially when you look at like the video games industry, apps, things like that, is that companies kind of want to start making that money back quickly. So they just ship a bunch of bugs and they don't care, and they let the users find them. We don't do that. We work hard to make sure that if there are any bugs, they are very small. And, usually we do actually reach the point where, to our knowledge, there isn't any bugs. Now, there are probably bugs under the hood, and we'll find those out, and we'll do firmware updates over the next few months. But we usually don't ship unless we're at the point of, we don't know of any bugs. Let's go,
Okay. Well, also, I think one thing that I really, really like about, I think it's a relatively recent approach for you guys, with Aurora, Nautilus, and then now Mojave, having the USB drive on the front, and then the narwhal editor. I can't wait to get into narwhal with my Mojave now, and because it's a complex module, so I'm still wrapping my head around it, but I'm getting to the point now where I can use it with what's the word I'm looking for, with intent, and I know this is these are the realms within the settings I can get to get close to what I'm after. And now that I'm to that point, I'm excited to jump in, because I used it quite a bit with Nautilus. Which, side note, I'll maybe cut this out, but did you guys receive my Nautilus that I sent back for repair? I sent it back a little while ago.
sort of embarrassed to say I have zero idea if we did or didn't, but we probably we probably did, and they're working on it. I can check on that.
Well, I realized I should have got you guys a tracking number, and I was like, oh, that was dumb of me. So,
no,
anyways,
I'm sure it's fine.
I'll edit this part out. But yeah,
either way, it's fine.
Using Nautilus or using Narwhal with Nautilus was really cool, and I'm excited to. And then also with Aurora, just having the FDN. I've been rocking. I've probably used that 75 to 80% of the time that I use Aurora. But it's always in my, like, it's my main reverb. I think that's probably why I keep the FDN on it, because it's just more of a catch-all. But I am on the hunt for a new reverb because I want to get back into using Aurora, for what it is. Cause yeah.
Right. And this is something that's been very important to us since day one. With the original nebulae, it was open source. We made our own alternate firmwares, and we encouraged community members to write firmware for it as well. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've always noticed about modular users is that they're very unique in the sense that they know exactly what they want. They always have this very specific workflow in mind, and they want the module to adapt to that. I haven't seen this, musicians are a unique breed, and I think they're usually particular, but modular users are kind of another level because they're already designing their own instrument.
Right. And so it's inherent within the
exactly. It's implicit in the format, kind of, right? You want your modular to be modular. And so we've been working on it over the years, and what we found is that, open source software is great. People writing code is great, but if you take the number of people who know how to write code compared to your average modular user, what's the percentage? It's not huge, So the idea that we can configure our hardware without code is a powerful concept, and something that, we really have been trying to push forward for. And the culmination of that really was this Narwhal web app, which lets you just select the settings from a dropdown and then export the file and then load it via USB. You don't have to take the module out of your case. You don't have to finagle some weird cable on the back, just flash drive, boom, 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 and then you're off to the races.
Yeah, as somebody who, I've been a hardware guy, not because of any hipster reason or it has been almost like explicitly because I just I just got the Expert Sleepers ES9, and I know that that's not a hard thing to figure out for people with but once I bring computers and interfacing computers with hardware and stuff, I always hit these weird bumps that once I'm shown what I'm doing wrong, I'm just like, how the hell did I not figure that out? And all this is to say that having some the Narwhal thing, I was just fucking blown away by how user friendly and, for lack of a better term, idiot proof it is. Do the thing, export it, put it on the USB drive, replace it, and just put it, even switching hardwares or firmwares on the Aurora, everything is just you've really streamlined the process, which I think is, I guess, thank you for on behalf of all the other people out there like me.
No, I appreciate that feedback. I'm glad to hear that it's been painless like it's supposed to be. That's always the goal,
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so Narwhal is, because at first I thought it was just for Nautilus, but that's just kind of you have plans to make even at right now, I'm not sure, but I thought, can you do anything with Aurora on that yet? Or is there plans to be able to do stuff with Aurora? And
yeah, as of right now, you can't do anything with Aurora. That was something that we came up with for Nautilus, hence the Narwhal moniker.
Right.
And then we loved it, and we got a lot of good feedback, and it kind of just, this light bulb went off, which is sure, writing code is great, but not writing code is way better. Always, even if you're a programmer, right? Zero code's kind of always better than code. And so we got excited, and we thought, well, let's just do the same thing for Mojave, but let's not make a new web page. It's going to be kind of convoluted. Let's just stick it all under Narwhal, and then kind of each henceforth module will update it. And then, as we get time, hopefully we can also just move our way backwards, at least to Aurora, because it's got the USB, flash drive on the front there. And open up full configurability. And what's been really neat is a lot of the requests we're getting from users about the tweaks they want to do to it are really easy for us to put into narwhal, but they wouldn't necessarily be easy to make alternate firmware for, or like implement into the official firmware, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
hey, you want this weird, really crazy arcane feature? Sure, do it on narwhal. We don't have to talk about like, is it worth putting into the official firmware with an edit function or something crazy? Let users customize it to their heart's content, and it won't detract from anybody else's experience.
And that's, you just underscored, I think, what I really like about that system. Is, you know, I think one of the reasons that digital modules can be intimidating or have shade thrown is, you know, the menu diving, the button combination type thing. And I would way rather honestly go to a web page that has, you know, like a really simple layout, you know, 10, 12 parameters that have a drop down menu of, you know, a handful of options each. But, you know, when you add those all together, it can be, you can make a quite a bit different module. I would rather do that really quick and then just put that USB back in than get the manual out. Oh, what was I have to push shift and, you know, and turn this knob to here. Like, yeah. So I think it's just
100%.
Yeah.
And if you look at Mojave, there's no shift button, right? You know, and we've done the shift button. We've done it to death. We really did a lot of shift button. And then the last few years, we kind of, I don't like it. I forget, you know what I mean? If I don't patch with it for a few months and then I pull it up, I'm like, wait, what was that key combo? And that's not what modular is about to me. It's like, it's about knobs, right? It's knobs and CV. That is what modular is about. Let's stick to that. Get rid of the shift buttons. Let's keep the configurability, but let's put it somewhere that makes sense.
Yeah. And also, you know, if you're live gigging or whatever, like USB, you can get small USB drives for pretty cheap. You could just like, you know, turn the mixer down on that module, switch it out, and now you've literally got a new module, and that's you know, better than on stage trying to do some shift.
Right.
Yeah, no,
trying to remember on stage while you're in front of people.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
So yeah, that's I guess there were not a lot of questions there. I was excited to talk to you, you know, just about, this was kind of what was occupying my mind, you know, since we made plans to do this episode. Just like, I really wanted to not only express like gratitude and you know, like give you all the attaboys, you know, because it's really nice. But now I also do want to, like, let's dive into Mojave, because this module is, so granular modules have always been very mysterious to me. I use Morphogene, but I'm still not clear on how exactly, like what exactly Morphogene's doing when I'm making it do the Morphogene things that I always make it do. You know, and I've never really had a whole lot of success with clouds. And then, you know, I'm blanking, nebulae, of course, which that one didn't like perplex me. It doesn't but you know, I feel like it just, what am I trying to say? I feel like with Mojave, there is just this whole huge expanse of different ways to use granular synthesis that, after, you know, you kind of wrap your head around the controls and everything, pretty intuitive, but also like extraordinarily unique. Like this, I just tried it the other night because I was like, it can't be that easy, because I saw the patch example of like the arpeggiator, and I just put a droning note into it and then turned the mix all the way up and put the settings right. And it's like, oh shit, that could be like a fail safe for a live show. Just like get an extra Mojave, have that in the corner with an oscillator going into it, and just and if like something fucks up, just turn that up in the mix until you fix it or whatever.
the backup plan. The plan B.
But I mean, like, that's just like one of, like, I've been actually using it for percussive stuff lately, but I am talking too much. I just realized I was trying to get you to talk. So like, whatever you want to say about the inception of the idea and then till now. What's the story?
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, granular has kind of been almost like our bread and butter, so to speak. It was the first module we ever released. We already did V2 on that module. And then we've kind of skirted around on things that are almost, almost granular, but not quite, with like the data bender.
Yeah.
So, proximity, it's in the granular world, but it's not quite true granular. So it's always been almost in the back of my mind with, what can we add to this conversation? And, maybe the best way to kind of start this is, what is the nebulae and how is it different? Because, a lot of people ask that question. Well, you already did the nebulae. What is this? Am I selling my nebulae? And it's like, not at all. They are not even the same thing.
Yeah. Just to like underscore that point, when I posted my first patch with it, with Mojave, and then, somebody in the comment, and I know how comment sections can get, but I can also see where they're coming from, having not used it yet. Like, do we really need another granular module? Like, what does this do that the others don't? And it's like, I've never played with one granular module that is the exact same as the other one. They all have something to offer that are completely unique. There's a lot of similarities. There's overlap because they're, it's granular synthesis, and but yeah. So I just wanted to, like, I can see that just by seeing that one comment, that made me think of, like, what do you guys get?
Yeah, it's a valid question. And the key thing to remember is that the nebula is really a sampler. So it wants to record in a, over 10-second buffer. I mean, it could be whatever, second or longer buffer, ideally, or from an audio file. And then you're going to operate on that audio file and, really control it specifically to what you're looking for. Mojave is a live processor. It's more of an effect than a sampler. And that's kind of the key distinction to keep in mind. And you can use them for different things. If you want to just transform some sound quickly into some Curtis Rhodes style granular transformations, get Mojave. It's plug and play. Immediately, it's going to give you what you want. Whereas Nebulae, maybe you'll have some more specific things in mind when you're working with it. And that was the inspiration, right? So, for years, I've always thought, like, man, I wish we could do a little more straightforward approach, like something a little more plug and play. Like I just said, something that felt like Data Bender, where it was more fun and you could get results quickly, but was still granular, because I love granular and it does amazing things. But something that moved away from this sampler, let me, press record in my buffer. All right, set my loop points. All right, we're like 3 steps deep and we haven't even started hearing granular yet. We haven't even started hearing our grains. So it's been in the works. It's been stewing. The team and I have conversations about it over the years. And, when it comes to making modules, we like to have sort of an intellectual framework to operate within before we start on it. So we like having a concept, because inevitably you're going to have to make tough choices in any design.
That's probably a good way to weed out feature creep.
Exactly. Yeah. We've made modules that do everything, and they're not great at anything. They're just okay at most things. We learned that lesson. And so one cure for that was, okay, come up with your concept first, and then really try to adhere to this framework that you can operate in mentally, and then help it become this great at one specific, subset of tasks. And so for us, it was kind of like we were missing that. We had the idea for a live granular-esque thing, but what is it really going to be? What is it really going to be inspired by? Yeah. And so a couple years ago, but roughly 2 years ago now, I was in Joshua Tree, which is in Southern California. It's a desert.
Yeah, I was just there.
Nice.
Not just there. I was there in February. Yeah.
Oh, rad. Perfect timing. Yeah. Not too hot.
Yeah, no, it was still warm. I actually brought my my synth. I did a remote performance.
Nice.
I also want to take a moment to remind everybody that there is a Podular Modcast website with a store with all your winter beanie needs being fulfilled over there. We've got hoodies, multicolored hoodies, got some cups and mugs. One of them has my mug on it. I made that joke recently, sorry. Of course, we got the tie-dye beanies and the 5-panel caps. So yeah, if you would like to support Podular Modcast, head over to podularmodcast.com and check out the store. And another way you can support the show is to head over to patreon.com/Podular Podular Modcast and sign up there. I would greatly appreciate it. I know times are rough out there. The economy's kind of bad, and I'm feeling the pressure from that. So if you are in a lucky position to where that's not really affecting you and you have a few extra dollars, I mean, the cost of a cup of coffee, I am going to be doing another Patreon giveaway where I just randomly post on the Patreon a picture of a bunch of stuff, and it's going to be a first come first serve basis. So you see the picture of all the stuff, you chime in, say I want that, and then I'll say okay, it's yours. And the reason I have been slow to getting around to it is I still have to make the cover art for these. These are cassettes filled with a bunch of my music that I personally dubbed. I've been having a lot of fun making my own Tim Held music mixtapes. And yeah, so if you want one, I forgot what I put on it. It's kind of like just whatever I feel at the moment is cool music that I'd like to share. But yeah, so those will be part of it. The cassettes from my buddy, old co-host Ian, his project Skygas. I've got a bunch of patch cables. I've got a bunch of stickers. I've got some t-shirts. I forgot what else. There's a bunch of stuff. But yeah, that's going to be coming up soon. So if you want to have a chance to claim some of these cool things in the giveaway, then head over to patreon.com/PodularModcast.
We had this idea stewing for a while for hands-on, plug-and-play, immediate, just fun granular processor, something that wasn't, granular adjacent like Data Bender. And so we had this idea, we had a few meetings, but we didn't have the intellectual framework, for working within to answer those tough questions. So the inspiration really came when a couple years ago, we had a trip out to Joshua Tree. We're staying at an Airbnb out there, and we got this warning on our phones popped up, and it was for a haboob. I don't know if you know this term, but the technical term for a desert dust storm is a haboob.
When were you there? When was this?
Gosh, I can't remember the exact dates now. I want to say it was in 2021.
Oh, okay. Because yeah, we had some dust storms while we were there in February, like crazy.
I guess they're super common. Yeah, and we were there sometime in the winter too, like somewhere between January and March. Super common, yeah. But after the fact, we're talking to everybody. They're like, "Did you see the haboob?" I'm like, "Did I see the what? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, it's just commonplace for them. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So this dust storm, right? We get this warning, and I'm kind of excited, it's not particularly dangerous necessarily, but just I've never experienced it before, right? So you kind of see the clouds coming through. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. The sky gets kind of dark. But what was amazing to me, so where we were staying had this wall of glass. It's kind of the vibe out there because they want you to be able to see the landscape and all the boulders and the rocks and everything, right? So, in the living room is just this wall of glass, and the sand gets closer and closer and closer, and it just assaults the house and it just hits it. But what blew my mind away was the sounds and the textures that were coming through the walls and the windows and all the glass was just incredible to me because it was, it's what granular is. It's these little tiny pieces hitting it, making this tone, and then it changes, and then the timbre changes because the density or the direction of the wind. And it kind of just hit me like, whoa, that's it. Like we could make a granular module inspired by this exact experience. And, it was, to me, it was a very musical, inspiring, just audible experience that I went
fantasizing about having my field recorder there with all my different mics and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just super, really satisfying for me to experience it. But it really got me thinking that this was a cool idea for a granular thing. And, we've seen thousands of iterations on clouds, and they all have these fun, unique names that are plays on, all these different things and whatnot. And that was in the back of our minds too. We don't really want to work in those conceptual areas. We really don't.
Right.
And for some reason, I'd never, at least personally, I had never made the connection between the desert environment and granular synthesis. But it's so true. I mean, it was literally, I was experiencing acoustic granular synthesis against the windows, which was just super neat and really kind of a fortuitous experience to be happening at the time that it did. So anyways, fast forward a couple years, that became the the inspiration, we started mocking up controls and deciding, okay, so like, what's going to be the wind and what's going to be this and how are these going to correspond to these various things. And of course, we build upon it and we extrapolate and we do fun twists and make fun sounds and whatnot. And the module that we know of as Mojave is out there today. But it started with that initial experience.
That is I love that because, like, I think had if you asked me to pontificate or fantasize about like the inception of something like this, like I would more picture, like a handful of people sitting around a table with like a bunch of different synths that already exist. And well, we don't want to, this is their thing, but what do all these lack? And I think that's just such a more entertaining and special story. That's so cool. Which also underscores like that had to have been like, I feel like that was a very powerful experience for you because it also when I saw Mojave was the name, I was like, okay, we've left the nautical theme, and I was wondering how hard that was for you to leave the nautical theme, because I know you're super into diving and stuff too.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a bummer, but
it also makes such sense, like that. And it was paired with that story. That's I don't know, that's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the desert environment. It's still a super cool thing to me.
Yeah.
I've always, growing up in Southern California, I've always taken trips out there for vacation or whatever. But yeah, it's good to mix it up.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the other thing about Mojave too, kind of just from what sets it apart, like an inspiration standpoint, is we really wanted to move away from, like I said on the nebulae, this sort of contrived, like not contrived, it's not the right word, but these like, multi-step process to get the sound happening. So with Mojave, this concept of macro controls, the auto magic is kind of what we always call them in-house, which really started with Data Bender for us, this auto magic concept where, granular synthesis has a tendency to be boring. I mean, let's face it, right? It can be very static, and boring is really the best word for it, unless you modulate it. Once you get modulation in there, it starts to get magical. But without that, it's static. It sits there. It's chopping it up into little pieces. Okay, whatever,
Right.
So for us, we wanted to get something that was just automatically more interesting off the bat. And so that's really where the macro controls come into play. And that's the, all the actual, the Rogan knobs, the big knobs on Mojave are all of the macro controls, which essentially move things internally without CV, without modulation.
Right.
And that was the other aspect when we were first getting started, that we're like, okay, so let's go the complete opposite and let's just make it automatically, it runs on its own. Like the system is going, it's doing things, and you're controlling that with these macro controls that you're tuning in, dialing in, turning up, turning down, but then it kind of just runs, and it's not that static granular that we're used to. It's this whole new thing that just is more fun, and you can focus more on, crafting the overall sound instead of dialing the minute details that maybe you don't really need control over.
Right. Yeah. And I just lost my thought, but there was something about that. And yeah, just having all the array of different options that are literally a click of a button, to sometimes change the effect of that knob, like what it does when you turn it, or just how it's happening, or how whatever is happening just by that. I think also, it does make it a little bit of, deeper module to wrap your head around, but ultimately, once you get to that point, gives you a whole lot of options. And what I really like about again, kind of going back to my like being bad with like figuring out tech stuff, this has been probably the most streamlined, not having to refer to the manual usage of a complicated module that I've had, to where like, after, I've probably put in, I don't know how many hours, but like so many hours of working with the thing, now I can at least there's a part of it's part intuition, but part like a nebulous understanding of what's going on so that's one thing I'm excited about, because I'm like, okay, this is relatively new to me. So just keep working with it. And this is going to be a huge addition to the arsenal of what I will be what I'll be capable to do.
I love hearing that. That is just like, you have no idea how great that is to hear. And it's been definitely something we've been working towards with the past few releases.
Mm-hmm.
Each knob should get you to sweet spots, right? More sweet spots. I mean, right. I see so many beginners come into modular and they just turn 5 knobs in a row and it doesn't do anything and it's still silent and they get kind of bummed out, And of course, you need to learn how it works. You can do it with the mixer. But at the same time, making the sweet spots easier to find has been a really big design principle for us over the years, and really, has culminated in what Mojave is and what it does best is hopefully it's getting you to the sweet spots faster and easier.
Yeah. So that's actually, I think you just you paraphrased what I was rambling about there very nicely. And I before I use this next case, I want to just put the caveat that this is user error. But I found increasingly from Aurora to Nautilus to Mojave that ease of finding sweet spots getting easy. It's getting easier. Yeah. Aurora was pretty still I put the FDN on it, and I've put the original firmware back on it and have really enjoyed what's happening, but still have yet to totally understand what am I doing? What are the choices that I can make that I'm going to see? Again, user error. This is not on this. I want to be very clear about that, because I don't go to manuals and I don't go to YouTube videos until I absolutely have to, because I don't know. It's just much. I think it's like an ADHD thing. I have to figure it out, which is dumb. But then Nautilus felt like, okay, this is the same. Of course, it's not even close to the same module, but it's the same designers. So I'm understanding the ethos and the philosophy behind it. And then with Mojave, I'm just like, okay, they're definitely refining something within the process here of just basically UI, I guess,
For sure. Yeah. And we try to spend a lot of time listening to user feedback and really processing that and cataloging it in a way that we can improve future designs. We do, and maybe people don't realize that, but we read your text board emails and we save them and we refer to them later and we try to find out, well, where did we go wrong with that? We are so close to these designs. It's like we can fire up Aurora and get a great sounding reverb in a couple seconds because we've used it for 10,000, not 10,000 hours, but a lot of hours, because we had
probably,
to.
Yeah.
Right. Collectively, sure, but that's not going to be the user's experience, and it doesn't need to be. So, taking that feedback and constantly improving on designs is really important and enables you to take the things that are good and then make them better. And then really start to carve out a unique kind of design signature over time of the good stuff and leave the bad stuff behind. So, I'm honored to hear that, maybe that's working and, you've seen it a little bit. So, I love getting that feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned earlier, Data Bender, I feel like Data Bender is maybe the beginning of your next stage of evolution, not proto, because Data Bender is amazing. I don't mean that, but I feel like since Data Bender, there has been this consistency and movement towards what you guys are currently, and I feel like I see that solidifying, especially over Aurora, Nautilus, and now Mojave, which I know. I mean, that has to be, that obviously we've talked about it, is well thought out, but it's going back to do we need another granular module comment? I'm thinking to myself, well, we're all in a capitalist society and we all want to, try to make that as painless as we possibly can. So some of us are lucky enough to, get into a thing that's our passion, but then now we've mixed our passion with our commerce. But then, I guess what I'm trying to say is I've asked some other people this, how much of a struggle is that? Cause you have to keep making stuff, but I know all of you modular creators are your artists, I think, first and foremost. And I think I get the sense that it's very important to you to not just be kicking out, you know, items to sell. So like that, like how do you manage the wrestling of the art and the passion with the capitalist side and everything? Like,
that's a great question. And, you know, we operate within this really unique sphere, Eurorack Modular, where we're lucky because people actually want artistic things. So we don't have to think, well, okay, let's hit these tech specs and sell it for really cheap and make this, you know, mass produced thing that ultimately is not very interesting or fun or important. You know, how often do you really find important art and mass adoption like going hand in hand? You know, but in Eurorack, we're kind of there. Those are the modules that people want the most, and that's really satisfying and fulfilling to me to know we can step out on a limb, we can take chances and do things that maybe are important, maybe are great works of art or whatever you want to call them. You know, that will still be sought after by people to purchase. They'll still be great products while also being sort of cool musical tools. You know, and so I think we're lucky in that regard. But it's definitely something we think about. We think about both sides. You know, ultimately, yes, we have to keep the doors open, so we need to sell products. But at least the users seem to be most interested in things that we also consider to be our best work. It's not like I'm like, man, that module we only sold 10 of, that was really the best thing we ever did. No, that's never been the case.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
so the proof's in the pudding, as they say.
Right. And, you know, from my own perspective, I love when, like, you know, because we see lots of other manufacturers, they make competing products. We make competing products. I love seeing those things come out. People ask me that, like, how do you feel and so and this? I'm like, I love it, man. It's great. Like, Eurorack wouldn't be Eurorack if it was one brand. And how cool would that be? Like, when I'm at home, am I patching with only Qubit modules? I'm not, to be honest with you. I love the fact that you get synergy. You know, it's all about these different philosophies coming together. And that's what makes the whole ecosystem thrive and improve. You know, we wouldn't have had the last 10 years we've had in Eurorack if there was only two brands. So
yeah, for sure. And I think also, like, going back to like something being implicit or like just built into like the format or whatever, I think just the format alone of modular, even though I know that we're getting a lot more of like multifunctional things, and I don't have a problem with that. That's a whole other conversation. But I think because of the level of specificity or the level of control that you have in guiding all of the signals, that keeps it a ripe, you know, a really fertile field for many minds to come in and make similar things, but they're slightly different. You know, like at first glance, people could look at Nebulae and Morphogene and be like, well, what's the difference? Having experience with both, I would say they're both worth having, and the reason they're worth having are for different reasons. Sure, there's some crossover, but there's crossover, and they're both granular loopers, or you know. But yeah, I think we're lucky to have this very strange niche, but like big enough to not be so niche that people can make a living off of it while providing these pieces of art that are also devices to make art. And I just realized I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel of this ramble. So
yeah, no, not at all. I mean, you summarized very eloquently, basically, you know, the whole idea that they can be unique products and work in the same realm, and they are unique. We don't have Me Too products in Eurorack. We really don't. And that goes back to the whole thing that users want interesting artistic musical tools, you know? And so sure, you can buy 3 granular things. They're all going to be different, and they will all very much have the stamp of the person who designed them. Let's like look at Eurorack. Think about all the makers you think of. They always have a very, very unique take on whatever process or algorithm it is they're working under. And so you shouldn't be concerned. Is it going to be the same? Is there too much overlap?
Right. Absolutely.
If you're buying, maybe if you're in I don't know, if you're in another industry, right? I mean, there's industries that are more saturated with manufacturers. You'll start to get that. But I haven't seen it in Eurorack personally, not yet.
Yeah. And there's been times where the the maybe the shitty pessimist or like misguided angsty punk rocker that still lives in my head will maybe see like two companies release something and I'm just kind of like, well, wait a minute. But then every time I've had the opportunity to play with these two, hypothetical things that I thought were very similar. I mean, I'll be honest. Nebulae, I was like, wait, is this just like what? I don't understand. And then I played with them both like a lot, and I'm like, oh no, like I go to Morphogene to get Morphogene stuff, and I go to Nebulae to get Nebulae stuff, and they scratch complete, like, not only like, yeah, sure, they cover some there's a Venn diagram space there, but that space I'm not using either for that space, kind of, like, yeah. So I don't know. There's another ramble, but I feel like it is easy because people, and I think also as it gets bigger, I've felt myself like this. I'm trying to be very positive about it. And I think I've succeeded in shifting my thinking on it. But people like to have their special thing. This is very very, very niche. So like, as modular is growing, I'm sure there's people out there with concerns about that. And there are things to be concerned about. Like everything we were talking about disappearing because some, big, but yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that either, but I'm excited for the growth. I'm excited to see where it goes. And I am curious to like see, like, what is your, like, not treatise, that's too much of an imposition, but what would you say, like, is your view or idea, thoughts about where modular is and where it's going?
That's a very interesting question. And I've been in the scene for 10 years this year. So I've watched it. Thanks. Yeah. Really, really excited about that milestone. Yeah. But I have personally just seen the scene, and, I haven't been there from the beginning. A lot of the companies, and love were here at least 15 years ago. But even from where I started 10 years ago till now, we've seen a vast, paradigm shift between how people use modular synthesis. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's really exciting because the magic of modular was maybe more about the paradigm itself rather than the intrinsic technologies people had been using for all these years. And I'll kind of elaborate on that. But when I first started, you mostly had analog synthesis going on. So you had like your subtractive synth voice, or you had your Buchla bongo setup or whatever, but it's like, analog VCO, complex VCO, VCA, VCF, sequencer, and then, all sorts of modulations, LFOs, random voltage, noise, sample and hold, things like that. Mm-hmm. But what you didn't have was samplers and effects. And what I have seen happen in I'm almost embarrassed to say I didn't notice it until it was like very, very obvious, but everything shifted to where it became sampler centric, and everybody wanted to do digital audio buffer stuff, whatever that meant for them, and people stopped working within the subtractive synth workflow, and they started thinking like, I just want to make cool sounds, which to me was the excitement all along anyways. I want control voltage, I want knobs, and I want fun sounds, and so it didn't bother me any. I prefer to operate this way. I think it's more fun, it's more interesting, and the more new and experimental, exciting music we can make, the better. That was always my goal. So yeah, let's move away from the subtractive workflow. Let's do it. Let's go to this new era of modular synthesis where we can take
that'll
CV.
Still be there.
That'll
still be there. Of
course.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. You'll still use it, right? You still use a hammer even though you have a nail gun. But at the same time, let's find some new stuff. And for me, it's always been about that. So I've loved to see this shift and how it's very different when if you look on like Modular Grid, or, I always try and keep an eye out, of course. I'm in the industry, so Instagram or tech support videos, wherever, I'm keeping an eye on seeing how people set up their instrument, because that, ultimately demonstrates how they're patching. So there has been a big shift, and I don't necessarily see that like going backwards. I see it increasing in that direction. And the primary, the things to ask ourselves are, what's special about modular and how can we apply that to digital technologies? I think, so let's keep using the things that work, like CV. That's magic. Let's keep that. Let's keep these, knob centric workflows. Great. I love that. But then what about the synthesis aspect? What about the algorithms and the DSP? Like how do we pair that in a way that makes a lot of sense, And so, I feel like, we're We're on that exact journey. We have these conversations weekly or maybe even daily in our shop about these sorts of things. And I will say, like, Mojave itself, I've heard sounds come out of that thing that I'd never even heard before.
Yeah.
And that, that's something to say. There's something to be said, because, like, my job, as silly as the sounds, it's like my job is like searching for weird sounds, like that's all I do all day long is I just hear weird sounds, and I always keep an eye out for them because it's part of my job.
Yeah.
But I can't say that about every module we've ever released. Like Mojave, it made some weird sounds that I was like, that's unique. I've never heard that before. And so there's something to be said for that digital algorithms in hardware with CV or, with unique takes on them will get you to places you've never been. And
yes.
that's kind of the trajectory that we're on, and we want to stay on, at least for the time being.
Yeah. Yeah. I find myself like coming to this, like having this kind of like, this, I guess maybe like this paradoxical kind of loop, not the loop that's paradoxical, but I love modular because I like the hands-on, right? And I like the signal flow control. But then you start thinking about, well, space, and not only your space, your real estate for your setup, but the time that you have allotted in your daily life to devote to one of the most like time-consuming ways of making music. And in order to try to speed this up, save money, and save space, I feel myself gravitating towards more multifunctional, definitely a lot of digital stuff. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, well then why am I not just doing this on a computer? And it always comes back to like, well, it is the CV. It is, yes, there's multifunctional stuff, but basically like you find the thing that is streamlined your patching process. Like, okay, a sample and hold and this and that, like to do a melody with a sample and, with a random, with say I want to make a melody out of noise, sample and hold, all this quantizer. Well, it's pretty cool to not have to build that patch that I've built 180 times every time I want to go build a new piece of music. So there are these, like, I wouldn't call it weeding out, but you, as a synthesist and with the amount of options, you can find these workarounds. So you're still getting the level of control that you want or need. And it's always this, but like, why do I still take this time when I could get in a piano roll editor and get a couple cool soft synths? And it's because, this is not as fun as, and
right.
And that's why I think I can see it staying around, like even if it does get like completely digital to where you basically have VCV rack or, something but it's like still somehow like hardware. That didn't make any sense. I'm going to have to edit that part out. That was asinine, but I think you get where I'm going.
No, 100%. In a post-pandemic world, do we really want to spend more time looking at screens? And this is a big thing. I spend a lot of time on my phone. I spend a lot of time on my desktop computer, on my laptop. Do I really, really need or want to? Is it even healthy? Is it healthy to go home and all right, let's file up a DAW and just start editing waveforms, and I'm staring at that blue light more and more and more. So, I would say this, and maybe I'm not the first person to say this, but it is healthy to use modular, more healthy than making music in a DAW.
I totally agree with that, and I'm gonna take it one step further, and bring it into the wooey spiritual area. But I truly believe that patching, the process of, has helped. It probably helped that it kind of like came into my life and coincided with a time that I was really working on the idea of impermanence and the acceptance of impermanence in my life, and that like patches are, they're Tibetan mandalas, they're sand paintings that once they're pretty, you built it, but now you have to sweep it up,
Right.
You take a picture of it, record it, but it's time to sweep it up, and it teaches this patience and this also learning not to put as much stock as we can as we tend to do with in our expectations. I went to this synth to build this thing because I feel this thing. That's not what happened. And that happens a lot. So I have to be okay with that,
No, I love that. That's such a great perspective because, at the end of the day, it's a process music, what the definition of modular, right? It's process based. We all make different genres, but the process is what binds us together.
Exactly. Yes.
But that's really special, right? The ethereal nature of modular, it's here today, it's gone tomorrow, is also what's magic about it. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to be like, well, someday maybe I'll sit down and mix that correctly and I'll get it mastered and I'll trim it down and then I'll get it on my SoundCloud. Right. That doesn't even matter because you had your fun. You made your music. You were there in the moment with your modular. And if there's anything we need more of right now, it's being in the moment, not thinking about what to do or how to do it or whatever. You were there doing it. And that's truly special.
Totally. Yeah, that's this this is something that's been, beat to death in the Western world, the classic taking from, Eastern thought and it's spun around, but, what I guess a lot of people would call like a flow state or something now, but really the thesis of the book, the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance was just kind of like basically saying like the sweet spot is becoming the process. Like you lose yourself, basically lose your ego for a time where you are devoting, you are literally not thinking of anything but the process, and by that property, you become it, and time becomes kind of this weird, was that an hour? Was that 7 hours? Like that's how that happens, and I think as far as, I think you can do this with any music technology, and yes, you could do it with a screen, but like you said, not as healthy. So yeah, I think that's another, are we just like worshiping at the altar of modular right now? I'm just like thinking about the listeners being like, okay, we get it. You guys like modular.
Zen and the Art of Modular Synthesis. That's a book waiting for you to write.
Oh my God, dude, I'm going to edit that out. Me and you got to start writing. Like we'll do the co-author thing. Yeah.
Perfect. Sign me up.
Well, now I got a TV show I got to work on in development with R. Benny. What did he call it when we were talking? What's your waveform or something like that? It was another stupid joke.
Nice. Yeah. I love it.
Well, we're rounding up to an hour here soon. We're 9 minutes away from an hour. I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to just cover anything that you were hoping to talk about with Mojave or anything else. Have we missed anything?
That's a great question. I think we kind of covered, the gist of what it is, what makes it special. My own, if I was going to give you a little bit of my own favorite aspects, favorite sweet spots, I really love the feedback control. Mm-hmm. This has been really special. And just like on a personal note, like for the past 6 to 12 months, I've gotten really into noise music. So like harsh noise, power electronics, things like that. And this for me has always been, it's been on my radar. I've gone to a lot of shows in Brooklyn. I've been to all the noise festivals there, and I have a lot of friends that make this genre of music, but it's always been a little bit off my radar process-wise. I've never been super keyed into how they make this music. And I've gotten really into it. I kind of made a little setup at home. I've been practicing and listening, trying to pick it all out and read up on it. And it turned, the crux of it is really feedback. And that's what it all boils down to, is the magic of feedback and sort of the unpredictable nature of feedback and where that can take your music. And, if you look at Qubit modules, we really don't have a ton of feedback across the board on it. And in modular in general, there really should be more feedback. I wish more things had feedback knobs.
Yeah, outside of delay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. It's in the delays, but it doesn't always have to be in delays. And that's really one of the big things I learned on Mojave was feedback is kind of awesome everywhere in audio processing. Just plug the output to the input and you're going to get some crazy stuff happening that it's going to be unpredictable. So, back to that kind of new sounds thing for me coming out of Mojave, feedback is really where it's at. So if you crank feedback all the way, so that's on the gust control. It's reverb on the right, feedback on the left. If you crank that all the way counterclockwise and then turn up size until it's like, half second, quarter second long, or maybe all the way up even, you're going to get these weird transformations of the sound, which are kind of like comb filter-esque, but not quite. They're different. You know what I mean? So, and that all just comes from this weird thing about feedback. But the magic here is just because you have it in the same knob positions, it's not going to do the same thing twice.
No. So
it's dependent upon where you were the second before, right? And so it's this magic experience of it's not always the same, and it's kind of always taking me in this new journey that I'm just along for the ride.
Right. Especially, hold on. I had to make sure because they were the 2D controls, especially if your drift is being used too. Because then, so that's, I feel very cool right now because once you were like, oh, I'll share my favorite aspect, I was like, oh, he's going, that's kind of mine. So like what I'm doing a lot is keeping the size, like, I don't know, maybe like 25% up, you know, and then feedback all the way up on the purple mode, which is like the envelope of the shape of the grain, or the envelope. Is it the envelope of how the grain is released? Or is it the actual shape of the grain, or is there a difference between those two?
I think that's sort of two ways to say the same thing, but it's really is just the shape of the grain. If you looked at the amplitude shape of it, it's going to be that window.
So I'm doing purple, which I think is like the downward, like the reverse ramp. And, you know, depending on what I'm putting into it, usually like a multiplied, you know, in clocked mode. And this actually brings up, I've barely strayed away from it. The green mode of having your grains be generated by the incoming amplitude. I think that is a fucking cool feature. And I love that there are 3 different ways that you can do that. Because my thing was and this has been, again, user error shortcoming on my end, but having not a whole lot of luck using granular modules and making more interesting drum beats, percussive, rhythmic stuff with them. And you can do that with Mojave. And you get some cool fucking drum beats out of it. It's kind of like what Data Bender can do to a drum beat, but like not the same. They're cousins. They're not the same.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And, you know, that mode did come from that concept of immediacy, which is kind of plug in some audio and see. Let's have fun. Let's just see where it takes us. And then the module's going to do some of the heavy lifting for you there, and then you can refine it. But I'll have to try that myself. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I've been just putting my my Roland V drum through it.
Nice.
And it was fun because like I was doing it the other day because I wanted to make some videos for, you know, episodes, and I kept having to go get up and, you know, change some stuff. And then my friend was over and I was like, hey, will you just like play with that module while I play drums? And then if something cool happened, I'd be like, all right, leave it there. Let's record. And
that's great.
Yeah. Super, super fun. But I'm glad that you were sharing your favorite, because I really wanted to mention the green, the amplitude mode. I just think that is, maybe other modules have that. I'm not aware of any other modules that have that. And the feedback thing.
I'm not personally sure, to be honest. It might be on other things, but I'm not really sure. And you know, the one other thing we didn't really touch on yet that I'll mention briefly, which is just the clock synced and tonal nature of Mojave, is kind of, you know, another unique take on that, you know. And I hate to use the word like musical controls, because I think all sound is music, but you know, being able to sync things to a grid and apply that pitch quantization to the pitch of your grains is a really, really useful feature to have on there that kind of just simplifies your patching a little bit. You're going to do these things anyways sometimes, right? You're probably going to want to clock sync your grains. You're probably going to want to quantize your pitch. Why should you have to use external modules to do that? Let's just bake it right into it. And then I feel like the outcome is like exponentially better because you can spend that time making music instead of trying to figure out how to patch your quantizer. Does that make sense?
It does. And that actually goes back to the drumming thing, because, you know, I use like the 4MS percussion interface expander or the injector from Board Brain. They're both ways of getting a 1/4 inch signal in and creating envelopes and gates. And what I've messed around with my, where my outputs for my V drum to like, okay, what outputs from this drum set are actually going into the thing that is creating the clock that's clocking Mojave. And because I can mess with like the gate strength and how much the amplitude will kick kick off the clock, the bass drum is keeping the center, that's the foundation of the clock. But if I hit a tom or my snare hard enough, that adds a new gate firing to the clock. So those aren't happening so much randomly, but they're not happening on a repeating consistent scale. So that kind of goes back to what you're saying. Like, it's not only going to be different every time with that feedback thing up, and clocking your grains is really cool, but this thing clocks so well that you can send it irregular clocks and it stays with you. So as a person actually playing something, not just sending an automated sequence through, that's kind of what I've been looking for, like with this and experimenting with it. Like, can I jam with this thing? Because I'm going to lose time. I'm not worried about it losing time. I'm going to lose time, and then am I going to be able to? And I haven't tried guitar with it yet, but that's the next plan for sure.
That's really interesting. You don't always hear people saying they're jamming with the modular. It's like a band thing. Like, let's jam. I like hearing that from you.
Yeah. Well, and this
jamming
is
with the modular.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. And like I said, I'm just scratching the surface and just getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I know, like, these are the results I'm after. I know these are the parameters, like around these settings, the knobs around here, but it's also finding the right beat to play into these parameters that I have found, so it's like, I'm working with the module. It's like a collaboration in a way or something. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's super neat.
Now, okay, I don't want to take up too much more of your time and keep rambling at you, but just in summation or for at the end here, could you give us kind of just like a general walkthrough of like what is Narwhal going, like, what are you going to be able to do with Narwhal in Mojave?
Yeah, and that's a great point to bring up. So one thing that we already know we're going to be knocking out is more customizability for the built-in pitch quantization.
Okay.
This was something people brought up right away. Hey, can I use this scale? Can I make this scale? Can I use this programming language to do it? Yes, and no. We're going to make it easy so you don't have to program it, right? And we don't want you to have to use configuration files either. We want to just bake it right into Narwhal and come up with some sort of, easy to use, slick interface where you can just select any notes you want, including microtonal notes. And then that will become your grain pitch quantization. So that's something we're definitely working on. We're going to be doing that in one of the official updates. You'll have to do a firmware update on your Mojave, and then Narwhal will already be updated. But we want to give everybody as much customizability and access to that as possible. So it's not going to be restricted to Western tonal scales. We'll do microtonal. We'll do, whatever people want. Email us. Hit us up on Instagram, whatever.
Yeah.
Give us that feedback, and we'll probably solicit feedback before we do the firmware release anyways. But, let us know, and we'll try to get any accommodation in there that we can so that it makes it easy for the user to explore those worlds, because they're all fun, all interesting.
Yeah.
That's the big, definitely low-hanging fruit that we have so far on the docket. I don't know that we have anything concrete besides that, to be honest. We're kind of looking for feedback from the users, like I said. And then, of course, internally, we get, a lot of ideas sometimes, but kind of waiting to see aside from the custom scales.
Okay, cool. And you don't have to answer this. I'm just kind of curious, and I can edit it out. But like, how would you say the overall reception has been so far?
I think it's been really, really great. Yeah. I mean, tons of positive feedback. Like I said, a lot of music, a lot of patches, a lot of videos are already on YouTube, which, sometimes that takes a while. But I mean, as far as I can tell, people are extremely excited about this product, which is really satisfying to me, of course, because we made it. So
yeah,
no, just really, really, really heartwarming to see people gel with the idea, to like your take on an algorithm like that is really, really special. Kind of the magic. That's what this is all about. You know what I mean? It's cool designing stuff. It's fun designing stuff. But if people aren't going to make awesome music with it, where's the magic? And for me, that's really where it's at. So I've been very, very anxiously, eagerly watching and enjoying all of the content that I can find. And as far as I can tell, people are really digging it.
Awesome. Well, so I will stop talking after this. This will be my last thing. So I got it for the beta testing phase, right? And then I'd put some time into it, went on a vacation, came back. Hey, sorry, I haven't put in much time. Oh no, it's all good. We're releasing, basically I was like, oh shit, it's being released. So obviously they don't need the beta testing anymore. But I still found myself using it in the exact same amount that I had planned on using it to give you guys more feedback on the beta testing. And that's something I just realized now. Like all of my patching that I've been doing in my free time over the past, 3 weeks has been messing with and figuring that Mojave, and really, so I think that is, for me, that's the mark of something special. So also it's just, that. Yeah. So thanks. And I'm super stoked for you guys.
Thank you. No, we're really excited as well, and excited to see where it goes with all the community feedback and engagement and the Narwhal web editor. So we're super stoked.
Awesome. Anything you want to shout from the modular mountaintops before we stop recording?
Oh gosh, I should have prepared something ahead of time.
Well, I kind of put you on the spot, so it's all.
I knew it was coming. I think maybe you said this last time. Oh geez, I'm embarrassed. No, I really appreciate you having me on here. I think Urak is an awesome scene. I'm honored to be a part of it. And, I'm lucky to work with a lot of great, fantastic, amazing people at Qubit. It isn't just me. There's a lot of awesome people behind the scenes, drawing the artboards that go on the back of the modules and writing the DSP and doing the website,
Oh, yeah, the art on the back is so cool. I love that you've been doing that for the last 3 modules.
And they've all been the same member of our team. He's an incredible artist. He draws all of them. He does them freehand and then traces them in. We create the bitmaps, convert it to PCB, do the whole 9 yards. But yeah, it's the same person who draws all of them. And all we do is tell him like, hey, just some sort of like weird Joshua Tree desert theme, and he kind of does some Google searching and he'll just bring it in. And usually it's first shot, maybe 2 tries, and we're kind of like, that's good. He's like, no, I gotta refine it. I'm like, hey, but this is awesome. Magic, you're really special at doing it. It's amazing. So
yeah, that's so cool. And you can tell it's the same artist because there's definitely a stylistic fingerprint on it.
Yep. So we have, he'll do drawings periodically. We just hang them all over the shop, even just like little sticky notes, put them up, just try and save some of that work because it's all very identifiable.
Right.
His name is Hugh Schock, just for the record.
I saw that you made a post, and Hugh was a huge shock for me to, just kidding. I'm sure that he's got that joke his whole life, and I just did it to him again. Hugh, I'm very sorry, but I had to. All right, that's a good place. Make sure he listens to this now. Yeah, right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's our show. Thank you so much for coming back to Podular Modcast. Thank you to Andrew for coming back on the show. And for those of you who live in the Pacific Northwest, don't forget that I'll be playing a show here in Tacoma on Sunday, November 26th at Real Art Tacoma. Link in the show description for that. Of course, we can't forget we've got Patchworks. Thank you so much to Patchworks for their continued support of the show. Head on over to the Podular Modcast store if you need yourself a beanie or anything else PodMod related. Don't forget to sign up for Patreon if you would like to help keep the LEDs blinking over here at Podular Modcast. Thank you to Novation, For a Mess, After Later Audio, and, of course, you for listening. This week's secret word is grainy grains. Grainy grains. Let's do grainy grains. So I guess this week's secret words are grainy grains. Thank you for listening, and until next week.